All right. As promised, part two. You are here for God's sake. You are here for God's sake. Today I want to touch on a few subjects. First, I want to touch on beliefs. Beliefs. Let's say you believe that white people ruined this country. It's just something random. Let's say you believe that immigrants are here for a better life, as examples. Let's talk about beliefs. You have to investigate your own beliefs and belief systems, and God help you if you don't. So when you think you know something or think you believe something, I think there are a handful of questions that are best asked of yourself and what you know. So if you believe something, a question you should ask is, did this belief originate within me? Or did this belief come from something or someone else and you accepted it as your own belief? Another question you should ask about your beliefs is, have you investigated your own thoughts about that belief? Have you, for yourself, looked into the knowledge surrounding that belief, researched it to some extent in your capacity, researched it? And you should ask, is someone thinking on your behalf? As an example, I'll put it out there. Candace Owens has a handful of times said there was no blood when Charlie Kirk was murdered, that there was no blood. There was blood. I can see it. And I hope that you can see it as well. That's one of many of her bold-faced lies. So I just wanted to touch on that first of all. Investigate your beliefs and understand whether what you believe came from your own analysis of an experience, or if that belief came from somewhere else and you accepted it as your own. Investigate your beliefs. I wanted to touch on that first. The next thing I want to touch on is part of why you are here. You are here for God's sake. You are here to glorify God and not much else. You glorify God in many ways, taking care of yourself, care of your family, being good to others, all kinds of things. But you are here to glorify God and not much else. I want to talk about Dante's Inferno just a bit. It is one book that draws from the Bible pretty well, as far as I can tell. I think I know why treachery, betrayal, is in the ninth circle, at the very bottom of hell. Because betraying your fellow man is possibly the worst thing you can ever do. Is to betray your fellow man. Next, I want to touch on another book that I think draws from the Bible very well. Milton's Paradise Lost. Paradise Lost is very, very often understood as a sympathetic piece for the devil. And I've seen a lot of people online sympathize with the devil, call God the tyrant and the devil the victim. And that's shocking. But no. When you betray your fellow man, you betray love. But what the devil did is betray God. He didn't just betray love, he betrayed perfect love. To betray perfect love and then name yourself the victim after doing something like that, that is moral degeneracy of the highest order. That is why the devil is the devil. To betray love, perfect love. You are here to glorify God. And if the price, if what is required to glorify God is your very life, then so be it. And if you will not die for God's sake, if you will not live for God's sake, then God help you. I'm going to touch on another subject. The most horrible regimes on this earth, North Korea and China. Possibly Russia. I don't know enough about Russia. Possibly they are in that category too. The worst regimes known to man. North Korea and China. How did these nations come to a place where they worship men, that they are so tyrannized, that they have gone so far into the depths of hell, that in order for those nations to gain their freedom back, it would require the lives of millions upon millions of people. They went so far into the depths of hell because they never paid the price in the first place. If they had laid down their lives as they knew they should have and could have in the first place, the regimes of North Korea and China could never have gotten as bad as they are today. It began as a manageable calamity. North Korea, as an example, began as a manageable calamity. Perhaps thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands would have had to lay down their lives in order to tell the truth and say no. And now, since they did not do that, since they could not summon, since they would not summon the strength to do what is required, now it's gotten so far that it's no longer going to require thousands or hundreds of thousands. Now it's going to require millions of lives. Now it's worse and worse and harder and harder and harder. That's what happens when you let something small and you don't deal with it, let it grow, right? That's what happens. It just gets harder and harder to deal with. You're here to glorify God. You're not here to survive. It's not suicidal to speak the truth. It's the right thing to do. When you love yourself more than you love God, when you love mankind more than you love God, it's a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for horror. I cannot love life more than I love God. Because what that means is, if I love life more than I love God, that means that when someone puts the trigger to my head and tells me lie, when someone puts the trigger to my head and tells me to condemn God, if I love life more than him, I will do it. That trigger will frighten me. It will cow me. That trigger I will fear it more than I fear the wrath of God. And it's a recipe for hell. Regimes like North Korea, regimes like China are the product of generation after generation of people who feared the trigger more than they feared God. That is the result of that. The result of people who loved God more than they loved life is the free world. The free world is the result of people who loved God. And North Korea and China is the result of people who loved themselves, who loved life, who loved man more than they loved God. You can't live that way. You cannot live for yourself. You cannot live for someone else. You cannot live for the love of life. You have to live for the love of God. And God help you if you don't. But that's what's happening. More and more and more and more people by the millions are loving themselves, loving mankind, and loving life more than they love God. And you can see it, you can feel it. We are on that path now. Every one of us as an individual can turn around and face God. Turn away from the dark. Open your eyes and look at God. Face God. Every one of us individuals can do it, no matter what we stand to lose. Even if we stand to lose our very lives, you can do it. It's not an unreasonable expectation. It is not an unreasonable expectation of any person to tell the truth no matter what. You must tell the truth no matter what. No matter what. You will die. Sooner or later, some way, somehow. You will suffer. It just depends for what. Will you suffer and die for sin? Or will you suffer and die for God's sake? It is your choice, moment by moment, decision by decision, microsecond by microsecond. It is your choice. Why are you here? Why do you live? Why will you die? It's your choice. The people in North Korea, I believe in the 60s, the people in North Korea could have died for God's sake from the beginning, and they would not be in the position they are in now. They could have died for God's sake in the first place. But they chose not to. They chose life over God. And so they chose to live for something else, anything else but Him. And so the next generation, it was even harder, even more dangerous, even more hellish. And then that generation, even when it was so hard, They had a choice as well, the same choice, to die for God's sake or live for something else and die for something else. You always have a choice. This generation of North Koreans, Chinese, us, we always have a choice. No one can put a trigger to your head, and a trigger at your head is not an excuse for betrayal. A trigger to your head is not an excuse to turn away from God. A trigger to your head is not an excuse to lie. Why are you here? What do you live for? What do you die for? We have to make our choice.